Hi guys, this is Sammy here from MECS Property in Harborne, and this is the Property Plug podcast. And with the Renters Reform Act bill coming out next year or even sooner, and one of the stipulations on it is going to be about pets, I thought it'd be very interesting to get someone on who can discuss pets, because right now it is easy for landlords to discriminate, if they want to call it that word, about not having pets in one of their properties to rent with tenants. However, the Renters Reform Act is going to state this as follows. Tenants will have the right to request to keep pets in their homes, and landlords will need a good reason if they refuse. You can still ask tenants to take out pet insurance to cover potential damage, but blanket no pets policies will be a thing of the past. So, Lee, let's work out if that's going to be a good thing or a bad thing. So why don't you firstly just introduce yourself to me and the viewers?
Yeah, I'm Lee. I'm Lee Hull. Family business. The family's been in this business now, coming up to 54 years. I'm second generation. My father used to work for one of the biggest companies in the world on the pest control division. As a company, it's a family business now. I've taken over my role and just been delivering services to anything from domestics to commercials for the last 50 odd years.
So it's called Hull's Environmental Services?
Hull's Environmental Services, yeah.
And what sort of work or services do you provide?
Everything we provide. We can go from the general pest control service, from anything from food areas, nursing homes, covering everything, doing all the inspections, putting stuff in place. So we can do anything from commercial to domestic call-outs, and then go through anything from biting insects, ants, bees, which I specialise in and have done for the last 15 years, work with the British Beekeepers Association, live remove them out of properties, stuff like that, and then rehome them in areas that we've got now, 50 odd hives in those particular areas. So we do the general stuff. I do more of the specialist stuff, but as a company, we've always done the mainstream stuff. It's a part of the industry that everybody has to do, because it's our bread and butter, realistically. Yeah. The domestic side is really call-outs. The commercial side is a portfolio. We build our portfolio, and that's
managed services.
It's a managed service which our portfolio has grown each and every year over the years that we've been in it. So we have anything from nursing homes to food premises, anything to deal with food, and we put that in place to coincide with the environmental health visits, which are generally 18 months apart. So that's exactly what
it's not reactive, it's proactive sort of maintenance.
Proactive and reactive, depending on what we get. So if we have a problem within a food premises, we'll go out realistically every 2 months, 8 weeks, just to inspect, make sure there's no problems within the property, make sure there's no problems that the client has with seasonal problems, from ants to cockroaches to you name, anything that potentially get into that food store area, and then have a problem with food being delivered to the tables. That's exactly how it happens.
That's good, interesting. I never thought about the managed side of it. I thought it'd be a lot of reactive.
No.
That's interesting.
Yeah, more than ever. In fact, you gear up more towards the reactive side, the proactive side rather than reactive side, because that
guaranteed residual income.
Yeah, and not only that, what you are developing is making sure that anything that was being brought in as products from an unknown source that you're buying, and it could be as simple as a shop across the road that has got a problem, who doesn't manage anything, and you're taking a package from there, which could be either a box of cornflakes into your property, opening those cornflakes, cockroaches then come out into your house, and they've been realistically harbouring in those shops that are not being dealt with.
Wow.
So that's the problem.
Are cockroaches in England? You get many?
Yeah, absolutely. We do loads.
Oh, disgusting. They are disgusting.
And don't forget, now with the temperatures rising more and more now, you are getting far more now within the country, and then into areas where there's a lot of food premises. And it's all about temperatures, because cockroaches will survive in an area that realistically is warm, moist, and that's most kitchens, most areas that are dealing, and that's why you can be closed down for cockroaches within a food premises more or less straight away.
God,
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine anything worse than
Yeah.
seeing a cockroach crawling over my food.
Absolutely, yeah, and this is why you've got to put those processes in place, because as soon as you've got that situation, you've got to really close it down, because that's your potential food harbouring store for you be closed down if you have an environmental health inspection and they find out that you've got cockroaches in there just off in a straightforward inspection, which you've never really anticipated that you were going to get. They do a walk-in, they do a clean sweep round of what's there, and then find either nymphs, cockroach nymphs, which are the tiny ones, and then you're in a situation where, well, why haven't you got somebody coming in to deal with this and deal with the problem you've got? So yeah, because obviously, like that, realistically, cockroaches spread a lot of diseases, from salmonella to all sorts.
I'm just trying to think, have I had cockroaches in a rental property? We normally get, in rentals, we normally get mice, rats, wasps' nests, bees' nests, that sort of stuff in our rentals. I'm trying to think, have we ever had cockroaches? I can't pinpoint one.
I was called out only 3 weeks ago to one of the big flats in Birmingham.
Right. One of the new build blocks.
One of the new build blocks. It was just on the 19th floor.
There's not many buildings got 19 floors.
It was just on the 19th floor, and the guy had just moved in, and he said, "I've got cockroaches in the property." Now, he just moved in. And I said, "You're on the 19th floor, right, okay. There has been an issue in the block, because what they do is come up through the rising the rising damp situation, where the block itself has got a riser that is linked for the fire hose equipment and everything else. They crawl up that and then come out into the kitchen areas. So,
oh my God, I'm getting itchy just thinking about it.
Yeah, absolutely. But the problem is there, and it's not something that people think, oh, blimey. But it can be as simple. They've got a terrarium or something that's in the block. They're feeding cockroaches to something that's in there. Say, for instance, an iguana snake. Or something, snake, right. or something of that sort. And they're bringing them in live, because they keep them live for either the spider or whatever. They're feeding them. One jumps out and then obviously starts to lay eggs, and it's as simple as that, and it can be as simple as that. Or again, packaging, food packaging, bringing them in because you've gone to a source that you don't really know where it's come from. Check your boxes.
No way.
Check your boxes.
I never thought about the feeding live cockroaches to, because tenants ask about snakes and tarantulas, and any animals have to be permitted under
pets.
The contract, the pets, yeah. And with this new law coming out, it's tenants' fee bill at the moment, because it's going through Parliament. It'll become Act next year, which means tenants will be allowed to have pets in their properties, and they can't unreasonably refuse. I just can see a load of problems occurring from this. One of the things they've said is, if a tenant's got pet insurance, that should cover it. But that's a huge minefield, isn't it, at the end of the day? Because you're depending on the tenant continually paying for their insurance. Are we going to be contractually allowed to terminate the tenancy if we find out they haven't paid for the insurance? I doubt that's going to be the case, because the tenants are getting a lot of rights at the moment. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I don't think banning pets is also a good thing or bad thing either. But we've got some great examples between me and you, which we've recently found with pets with a dog and the issues with that. Basically, a tenant was permitted to have a dog in a house, in an apartment, and the tenants left the property. It smelled like a bit doggy, bit of a dog smell, but the tenants, it looked really clean. So the tenant was given back the deposit apart from a few bits, and then they found fleas, didn't they?
Yeah, we went into the property. Obviously, the property ground floor level. I'd been asked to go in and just do an inspection at that particular time. Obviously, because she'd been getting bites, as I usually do over the phone, I asked the relevant questions: where the heights of the bites, where you're getting them, all sorts. Have you put the heating on? Because there's quite a lot of things that people don't realise about fleas. Fleas can last, realistically, in a property without hatching on the right temperatures for 12 months. And it can be. Once you've had a problem with an animal that's going in there, which is covered in fleas or anything else, and that building is then occupied or taken away or moved out, there's nothing in there, and they don't reoccupy that space for 12 months. Somebody coming into that house then can realistically agitate the floor because they'll start vacuuming. That agitates the actual eggs within the floor, which will hatch. They put the heating on, which is then a secondary thing because they like the heat with the moisture and everything else, because it's getting the moisture out of the house that it starts to heat up. And then obviously the fleas become so prolific then, and then start to bite you within that house. And that can be 12 months later. So the scenario of that is everybody goes, but we've had nobody in there for 12 months. Yeah, but that's the problem with the eggs. Because what you're doing is actually bringing them out of a dormant state into a state now that they're being agitated, they're right temperatures because the house is being warmed up, and then they're coming out for food because they need the food to then lay their eggs and that process to go with it. So they're coming out and biting you. And we always tend to find that, that we'll always say, where are you getting bitten on the body? And as long as you can say from your feet down to your knee, it's fleas, guaranteed, more or less. And what I always say to everybody, make sure on a property you're vacuuming all the time, because you're getting rid of the eggs in the carpets, you're getting rid of the eggs that would harbour in areas, and more so than on lettings, because the letting side is we go in and just do a standard spray on it in and out, because that gives a good, safe environment for the letting agents to say, we'll build that in because it makes sense, because the new clients is going into a clean environment, which now it's been treated, and we warranty it. So that's the thing, but it's a built-in cost going forward to know your client's going to be happy, they're not going to be getting bitten, and then coming out the other end, you do another treatment, because then again, they're not the new clients, it's transferring over. And that's the problem. We're getting more and more of that scenario every single year, because people want to see that the new clients are not moving into something that they're going to be absolutely
bitter.
Yeah,
that's a really interesting point. So right now, if you allow a pet in a property, you can charge a pet rent, which means you can charge a bit more on the rent. At the end of the tenancy, when they move out, the increased rent you've had, you can use that to put the house right.
Yeah,
which is fair, isn't it?
Yeah. And the other thing, what people and I will say, as tenants, if it was my personal house and I was letting out a property, try and reduce down on the carpets within a property, because as soon as you're reducing down on carpets within a property, you're reducing down the factor where they can harbour carpets, furniture, stuff like that, bedding. Any fleas will try and get into any fabrics so they can lay their eggs in.
Right.
Hard surfaces, you're mopping all the time, you're cleaning over. It's not something that they can actually grip to and harbouring. So the more hard floors you've got in a property, the less problems you're going to get. Obviously, people like carpets upstairs. I do like carpets upstairs. I've got a dog, but most of my downstairs areas, from my own personal experience, I feel that it's far better for us and far better for the dog and the environment and everything else. It's hard surfaces.
Yeah.
Perfect.
I think you're right. There's going to be costs there, though. A landlord might have to pay for the surface to get changed to a hard surface. Also, you mentioned something then about the eggs can lay dormant for 12 months.
Yeah.
And then imagine a tenant moves out of a property and then it's empty for 3 months and we rent it, and that person gets into the right temperature and they start hoovering and it gets fleas. The thing is, the person who pays for that damage might be the current tenant that's in there, because they've got fleas when they're in there. But really, the problem came from the past.
Yeah.
So that's going to be a huge problem to manage with the whole law if it changes and allows it, because it's not only just the fleas, though, is it? Because animals have got odours, and this house we're talking about had fleas and odours. I've not got a dog, and I can instantly smell a doghouse when I walk in. Sometimes it's irrelevant. You can smell it, but it doesn't bother you. But some dogs stink, don't they? What do you do if you go into a tenancy, or you go into a property, tenants have moved out, and it stinks like dog? What do you do?
It's a difficult scenario. Carpets are always a real biggest problem, because you don't know whether the dog or the cat's been urinating in specific areas all the time onto those particular carpets. what I'd always recommend is, pull back the carpets themselves, see whether the stain's gone underneath into the floor itself, so you see where the actual problem areas, and they'll always use the same spots. You've got to look at dogs and cats. Cats will always use a specific area. Dog will always tend to use a specific area. So what you tend to build up is, they won't always go back into that wet, but they'll move to the side of that wet. And if you pull back all the carpet areas and the actual underlay, you'll see where the actual predominant areas they've been using over the period of time they've been in the house. Now, where you've got that, I don't think there's much you can do realistically. You can clean the carpets by all means, but if it's an old carpet, it's a dirty carpet, you can, the washes that you can do will help. But if it's impregnated down into the floor and it just happens to be a chipboard floor, that floor is going to absorb the actual the urine that's going to penetrate into the timbers, and you'll see it lift, you'll see it bulge up over a period of time, especially with chipboard, because it's moisture that's built up in the chipboard and then absorbed all those smells, and you'll never ever get that out. That has to be cut out.
So are you saying here that normally the smells from animals comes from them urinating in the property?
No, it can be skin. It can be. Don't forget, they sweat like us. They've got grease like us. It's like my own dog. My own dog, Schnauzer. She doesn't molt. My wife said, I don't want a dog that molts because I don't want the hairs everywhere.
Yeah, of course.
So what can we do? I wanted a dog. I've always lived with a dog. Loved my dog. And I said, well, let's go for a breed that doesn't have that. We've not got the problem. So we ended up going for one of the Schnauzers. The dog itself doesn't molt. We have to clip it. Brilliant. I clip it. And then we tend to wash it every other week because they do get odours. They're like us. And actually, some dogs are far better by actually having a good routine with washing and just washing them down every 2 weeks. And that's a real good thing because it's keeping down those odours within the dog. It's like your hair. If you've got hair and you're not washing it for 2 weeks, you're going to smell. And it's no different to a dog.
Now, obviously, that then depends on, going back to tenancy side of it, we need good tenants that are going to be looking after their pets as well then.
Yeah.
Because if you've got them urinating, you've got the fleas, they've got the sweating, all the smells are in the property.
Yeah.
Like you said, if the smells get into the chipboard, you might have to change the chipboard area. You might have to change some of the subfloor.
Yeah.
It's like another issue which the landlord may have to deal with. And if we're falling back on this insurance policy, which we might have to enforce the tenants have, if that policy doesn't pay out because they've done something wrong, the landlord's going to lose again. So I'm just trying to understand.
Mitigate how you can.
How do you get rid of loss, basically? How do you stop yourself as a landlord or an agent losing when a tenant has done something wrong with their side of their part of the deal? Because you don't know, some tenants don't even clean the floor themselves.
Yeah.
They don't wash themselves.
Yeah.
How are they going to look after their dogs?
Well, that's the problem, isn't it? How do you deal with that scenario? Because
exactly.
the whole system is geared up towards somebody actually taking in a dog, but if they can't look after themselves initially, they shouldn't be having a dog.
Exactly.
And how do you mitigate that problem then when it comes down to you and bursary at the end, because that property's being left in a disrepair because of both them and the dog and not being able to look after either, but it becomes your problem.
Yes.
How do you do that?
Yes,
That's a difficult task, I think.
What I said at the start is they're going to make it, you can't have a no pet policy anymore, and unless you've got reasonable grounds to cancel a dog or a pet being in the house, you have to permit their pet to be there. I guess you could have cultural reasons, I don't want dogs in the house.
Yeah.
You could have allergy reasons, that you might move back in there one day and I'm allergic to dogs. I can't see many other reasons, unless you can think of any, how they would reasonably refuse having a dog in there. Because once this comes through, which I guess it is going to come through, your work's going to increase with tenancies, because
I quite agree with that.
I guess that people were having dogs in there. At the moment, people call us, do you take dogs? No. And they can't view it. On the flip side, if we have a house that does take dogs, the rent's really good because so many people want to put dogs in their houses.
Look, as I said to you previously, I'm a dog owner. You come to my house today, my house is spotless, and I mean spotless. Because one, we're conscious about the industry I work in.
You've seen the
dog.
worst.
Yeah, and not only that, it's personal pride.
Of course.
You know, you look after a house. What I don't understand is sometimes people assume because it's letted that you wouldn't treat it any other way than your own house, but sometimes they don't. They've not got that,
they don't.
that way of thinking, have they?
Not all people treat the houses as it's their home, I always find. Some people, they're a little bit lazy with the cleaning, lazy with the gardens, they don't maintain the decor. Like we see great tenants, but there's a lot of tenants that it's not bad. It's called wear and tear, but some houses just won't accept that wear and tear. Some landlords don't want to accept it. Like my house is, it's superb. Some people just don't mind wiping their hands on the walls when they're trying to turn the lights on. And we always find brown marks around light switches in houses. And when I see that, I'm like, this is going to be a messy house. I think this whole law coming in is going to create a good income stream for you guys. What you said there about if you could say, when they move out, they must get the defogging or whatever you call it, get rid of the smell or the fleas. And then the same on the other side, that's going to mitigate that problem, isn't it, the fleas? Yeah,
that's just one problem. Obviously, there's other issues, as you said. I'm allergic to some. I just happen to be allergic to cats' hairs. So we don't have a cat. I like cats, believe you me, but I just can't have them because my eyes stream and everything else. And I've been into many houses where I've gone in as a role to undertake a problem that the cat's brought in, potentially fleas. And then I've gone in and I'm streaming, my nose is streaming and everything. But you've got to try and mitigate that for somebody else, then let in the house. And the only way you're ever going to do that is by cleaning all the carpets, by cleaning everything down, making sure it's all spotless, because then you'll get rid of the hairs within the property. And that depends on how much cleaning that person's done prior. And there probably should be a regime there that house should be ticked off to say, it's all been cleaned, and go in and do an inspection, and that's probably the only way you're ever going to do that. And
we can't enforce cleaning as a managing agent. That's one thing we can't do. But there's solutions to everything, isn't there? At the end of the day?
Yeah, you can get companies in to clean the house.
If tenants are allowed to have dogs and cats without willy-nilly, we can enforce they must have cleaners every 2 weeks. Or will they allow that? Probably not. But that could be a solution, because at the end of the day, what needs to happen is they need to make sure that the house is given in the same condition it was given to them.
Look, you said earlier, if there's a price there that's going to be required to have a pet in there, surely a cost should be built in to make sure that it's going to be maintained well and cleaned. And if the client can't do that, they've got to be paying for some kind of cleaning to be dealt with when the pets are in that home. And surely if that's the better solution for it, and there's a monetary side put towards that, then surely everybody wins, because they've got the pet there and they can do that.
That's the current policy. That's part of the Tenant Fees Act 2019. So you can have a pet clause in there, you increase the rent by, to be fair, whatever you want, to offset the cost of damages. The new act coming in, which is the Renters Reform Bill, soon to be Act, that isn't going to have a pet rent in it. It's going to have in it insurance. You can enforce tenants have insurance.
So would that insurance come through you?
Yeah, well, essentially there'll be another income stream there for us. We can say you must use our insurers, but then the Act might say you can't enforce to use our insurers. So they might have to get their own insurers, and then they'll go for the cheapest one, and the cheapest one may not pay out. There's lots of issues which are going to arise from this, and it's interesting to see your side of it, because there's a solution to fix every problem, but it costs money. And if the tenants aren't paying and the insurance people aren't paying, landlords are paying. And if the landlords are paying, what do they do the next year? They whack the rent up. Who suffers? The next tenant. So with the government trying to help tenants by allowing to have dogs, it might put the rent up. Then every time the government legislate anyone, this is what happens. The rent goes up. Tenant Fee Act 2019, rents went monster. Now this massive Renters Reform Act coming in, I think rent's going to go sky high. One of the things they're bringing in is you can't allow bidding wars for rents. So right now, if you list a house for 1,500 and you get 10 offers, someone may offer you 17. They're not allowing that. So the market rent is the rent you're allowed to get. You can't get any less or any more. All that do, rents go up, because they're going to just try the highest figure ever, and someone will pay it. I think the government are just trying to destroy landlords, and at the same time, it's destroying tenants. They think they're doing the right thing, but the knock-on effects are astronomical. There's so many issues with the previous act, the Tenants Fee Act, that have come from that. They removed tenants' fees, so you can't charge tenant an admin fee at the start. Right. So we put all the costs on the landlord.
Yeah.
Our costs went up to landlords, rents have gone up by 30% since 2019.
Yeah, there's just different ways of doing things, isn't there? And I think, there's always going to be a way that's going to be built in, whether it's top end, whether it's through the back door. Somebody's always going to pay that extra charge because of the problems that always are going to rise for either pets or anything else. And I'm the best and most advocate of pets,
Sure.
but I understand there's got to be a way to, police or make sure that people are looking after both the pets, the house, and them. And if they're not doing that, then where does that fall onto?
Exactly. I think at the end of the day, tenants, landlords, they have a right, if they own a property, to decide who stays in their property. It shouldn't be down to an act or a law. If you don't want someone in your property who's got 3 dogs, then that's your right. I don't want dogs in my house. It's their property. They bought it with their own money. You can't just say the rule is you're allowed to have dogs and that's it, unless you can prove otherwise. That's the government controlling the landlords. It's their properties. Does that make sense?
So yeah, but so the other thing is, can you dictate what type of dog goes in that property?
Imagine they've got 7 dogs. Imagine they've got 3 of those Bernese massive dogs, molting huge beasts, which are beautiful dogs. But imagine they've got those. I don't think you'll be able to dictate anything about any dog. It'll be like they've got a pet and they've got insurance, they're allowed to rent it. And that's what's going to come in. And then you're going to have loads of problems, which you're going to fix. You're going to have to get the fleas, the defogging. We have to change floorboards, maybe chipboards, new carpet. I think one good thing is if it starts coming in, is landlords can't refuse it. Landlords will just start putting laminate floor everywhere.
Yeah, and I think there's a solution to that from the moment that comes into play, because you've got to be savvy about it. You know as well as I do, most properties that have been rented out for 2 to 3 years, you're going to end up changing the carpet anyway. And I know that's going to always be the tick thing, because you're going to expect that carpet to be. The problem is with going forward is making sure that actually you need to put the best solution floor in to accommodate now what's coming in. And the only ever way you're going to do that is by putting hard floors in.
Hard floor, yeah.
Every day of the week, tick it off, hard floor. And the only way that will then resolve it moving forward is you've got a clean surface to wipe down, the water's going to be coming off, you're not going to have harbouring floors that are carpets that are going to harbour anything that would be biting insects and everything else. The furniture's never going to, you're going to always have that problem with furniture. That's never going to go away.
You can't sit on plastic all day.
No,
can you?
No. But that
clean it.
That can be dealt with in several ways. There's cleaners out there. There's the steamers that we use, professional steamers that we use, and those are really good solutions. And that can be something else that can be done. And if it's the tenants or the client's furniture, then it's not so much of an issue. But if it's obviously people that are letting
it's something that's really important. So imagine if the houses are unfurnished, if they're all their own furniture, landlords put in hard floors, that could mitigate a lot of the problems.
Yeah.
I just don't know where it's going to go. I assume one thing is going to happen, rents are going to go up, because I think you're going to have to basically demand that the cleaning is done at the end of each tenancy and the start of each tenancy, just to guarantee there's no fleas.
Yeah.
And if there's a smell there, get your chemicals, get your fogging
Yeah.
systems out there and just get rid of the smells. I think fleas can be eradicated quickly. For me, as a non-dog owner, the smell is the one thing that will always be in the back of your mind. And if you've got a damp house, it smells of damp, people don't like that either. If you've got like a car, you spilt terps in your car and your car stinks of petrol all day.
Yeah.
Again, these things you just want to remove. So I guess just getting rid of the smell would be a great solution.
There's a couple of other things which probably just spring to mind. Make sure your dog's defleed, and you could have, every 3 months, you get them to make sure that...
Flea book.
Yes. So it's a record.
Yeah, or a credit check for a dog.
A record.
Dog record.
Look, we all have to have records for inoculation and all that kind of stuff. Why can't it be the same for the dogs, the cats, making sure the flea collars, making sure the dogs are done? And you've got a book that you're just filling in every time, which is 4 times probably a year.
I wonder if the insurance policies will make that mandatory, like if you want to have insurance.
Why wouldn't they?
And we're not going to pay out for the flea removal when you move out your tenancy if you haven't had flea checks in it.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see where it goes, and who knows, in a year from now we'll get you back on.
Yeah,
and we'll see
interesting.
What's changed with you? If you're doing more of the fogging, you do more of the flea removal, because there's going to be an uplift in work, because if tenants are having pets in houses, there's going to be some more smells and fleas, in my opinion. And if they've got snakes and cockroaches, and who knows what's going to happen.
You name it, like all in sundry that comes to it. And for every problem you've got, there's always got to be a solution. There's just a cost to that solution, isn't there?
Who burdens that cost?
It's just managed then,
We'll
isn't
see.
it? Yeah. Interesting.
Lee, thanks for coming on.
No worries.
Enjoyed it.
Nice, mate.
Cheers, man. Take care.